Hello, today we're going to be learning about placeholder components and how much power they can give in a design file. So what I'm talking about when I talk about a placeholder component is a component that I've essentially made and its whole purpose is to be replaced. So this is what I've made here for our Red Sky Design Quick Start file. It's purple, it says replace me, so it's really clear what its purpose is. But the reason I wanted to teach about this component is just to show how powerful it is in a design file. So what I've got here is a generic pop-up component that I've made, and this might look like how you would typically approach doing a component for a pop-up. And so I've made an instance of it here, and this is our save changes pop-up. So I've updated the header text and the body text as well, and the text for the buttons. But of course, we like component instances because it allows us to change things really easily and then update it across all of our instances. So if I were to update this icon and update it into something else, like a close with a circle around it, like this for example, we can see that when I updated it in the master component, it updated it in the child instance here. So assuming we had a ton of child instances, it would all get updated, and that way we'd only have to change it in one spot versus changing it in many places. The issue that we run into though with things like pop-ups as components is we need this content in the middle to be really dynamic, because while a text box might work for one pop-up, I might need another pop-up where I need an input field in here, for example. So if I were to try to put an input field in this child instance, I'll just grab this from my assets panel. When I try to put this into this child instance, nothing's happening. It's staying separate, and that's because that's just how component instances work. It has to exist in the parent component for it to exist in a child component. So a workaround around this would be to try to think of all of our use cases of pop-ups and just have them all in here. So I've put that placeholder in that input field now, and it's here. Let me just fix the sizing, and I could hide it in the master component, so that way when I do actually need that, I can go in my layers panel and then make it visible, so that way I can see it. But again, you really have to be able to see into the future and project all the different configurations, because if I wanted to add even an extra input field, I'd have to add 2 into my master component. So we can just see that it doesn't really work as far as the workflow is concerned. So more often than not, what we end up doing is we take a child instance, and turns out it's missing stuff that we need. So what we end up doing is we detach the instance, and that way we can put whatever we want in here. But then we lose the power of updating all of our child instances at once. So if I come back here and decide, actually I like that other close icon we had, I change it here, but now that this is detached, we don't get that update. So it's really counterintuitive to detach your instances. And that's where our placeholder component comes into play. So I have over here some pop-up components I've already made. So I'll just paste this one in here, and this one has the placeholder component. So I'm just going to move these off to the side. So I've got my placeholder component with the placeholder component inside. Sorry, my pop-up component with the placeholder inside. And this is a child because our master is off to the right over there. But what this allows us to do is we can replace this content with any other component that we have in our file. So let me come down here and show you. I've got some things already made up. So how this works is essentially whenever we need a pop-up, we can just duplicate one from our master. We can call it whatever we need to, and we can update the icon, in the master component. It will update here. But what I really want to show is the versatility that comes with these placeholder components. So I've got 3 different layouts here for a pop-up. One with 2 input fields, one with 2 text fields, and then one with a mixture. And so how we can use these components is just like how we replace icons all the time with different icons, we can replace this placeholder component with a new component. So if I make all of these their own component, and then I come into here and my swap instance, and then I find inputs, which is this first one right here. If I switch that and then just make sure my constraints are acting how I want to, hug contents, just like that, we've got our first pop-up, and it's still a child instance of the master component. So let's just make a couple of these pop-ups here. So now instead of inputs, I want it to be my text component. Make sure that those are filling the contents, which they are. Awesome. And then I'll switch this one to be my and more component here, and just make sure everything's filling container, resizing properly. So just like that, I've made 3 different pop-ups, and they're all still instances, as we can tell from the purple outline. And what this enables us to do is, we can create as many of these pop-ups as we need to. Their content is dynamic because they're attached to their own instance here, and we could even delete these out if we wanted to, because if we needed to change, it looks like it lost those settings, but if we needed to change these down the line, we can always just say restore component, and then it would just restore it, and we can add a third one if we need to, and just do it that way. But anyway, you can just see how much more dynamic that our components can be, and we keep it as a child instance of the master component. So let's say down the line we decide, oh, you know what, all of our pop-ups, they need to have more border radius on them. So right now it's 4. Let's say they want it to be 20 pixels border radius. Just like that, we've updated it in our master, and it's updated across all of our child instances, which we couldn't do before. If you remember, we detached the instance. So it allows you to maintain the power of master components, but also gives you that dynamic ability to change the content to whatever you need. And this is just one single application when it comes to these placeholder components. You can use this pretty much anywhere that you're going to have dynamic content and you don't know what that content will be, from the beginning. Some components, we know they have like fixed amounts. Like for our button instances, for example, we know what all of those variations will be. But when it comes to things like pop-ups or tables or things of that nature, this placeholder component is super powerful, and it lets you have all the benefits of Figma components, which is really cool. So thanks for learning about placeholder components, and we'll see you in the next video.